When it comes to nor'easters, you usually think of winter and snow and strong winds, but you usually don't think of summer when it comes to nor'easters, but they do happen, and this is one instance of that happening. We are expecting a nor'easter to hit parts of New England during the day, today, tomorrow, even into Thursday, and it's bringing a little bit of a taste of fall to the Northeast. Not in a huge way, but just a really needed break from the heat. So I have an AccuWeather article here. I just want to use some of their graphics real quick. So you can see early week cool pocket, 4 to 8 and 8 to 16 degrees below normals, and that is because the jet stream is dipping in the eastern part of the United States. And this will cause some severe storms. Not crazy, but a little bit of an event there in parts of the southeast, including Birmingham, Atlanta, Augusta, Columbia, Charlotte, and Raleigh. We're not going to talk about that today just because the event is pretty marginal. But the main ingredients here, those strong winds, not really there with the nor'easter, but we will be expecting plenty of rain. So, Monday, which already passed, really not much there except for down in DC, got some rain. But when we look into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, rain in parts of Maine, Massachusetts, and then showers and thunderstorms across all the Northeast and even into the South. So, we are expecting more rainfall in areas that really need it. Most of this area is in some sort of drought, and the rainfall that could be dropped by this system will be very beneficial to all of these areas. So we're going to start off with the European model, and we have our low pressure here that starts to work its way north, and you can see that the low pressure is fairly off the coast, but it is close enough to meet those nor'easter criteria. Now, the one thing that this storm is going to do that kind of differs based on what model you look at is turn into the northeast. And the European model has this turn further south than the other two models we're going to look at today. It has it turning into the Gulf of Maine here, bringing some of that much-needed rainfall to areas like Cape Cod and Boston and Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and Bangor and Augusta, Maine, before it starts to move off. This is actually a more beneficial scenario here compared to the other two models that we're going to look at today, the NAM and the GFS. Now, this is all set up by a trough here, and you can see this low pressure kind of moving up the jet stream here, and the jet stream kind of twirls in to the northeast, and we see the low pressure kind of move that way, but the jet stream does strengthen once again and pushes the storm out. So you can see that weakening right here where those winds aren't as strong. You can see here the winds at about 40 to 50 knots compared to, by the end of this event, the winds are up to 100, 120 knots. So a big difference there, and that is a part of the reason that the storm may linger longer than your typical system through the Northeast. And the European model is showing plenty of very beneficial rainfall, especially in the Boston metropolitan area. You can see here this pink area here, which covers most of the state of Massachusetts, parts of Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. That is 2 inches of rainfall or more, where probably the most rainfall will occur in Cape Cod, where you could possibly see 3 to 4 inches of rainfall. Now, that doesn't mean that other areas in the Northeast won't benefit from this. You can see in these blues, that's a half an inch to 2 inches of rainfall. You can see that's most of Maine, most of New Hampshire, southern Vermont, parts of upstate New York, as well as Rhode Island and parts of Connecticut, seeing that half an inch to 2 inches of rainfall. But we also have a big difference here. Let me zoom in a little bit. In terms of temperature. Now, as the storm moves through, you can see lows in the 50s. But as the storm starts to move out, you can see even highs in the 60s. Just a brief intermission from the heat, at least for probably the rest of the week, before those 90s start to come back towards the weekend. And that is a much needed break, as the Northeast has been above normal in terms of temperatures for most of the month so far. Has been very hot in the Northeast. So moving on to the GFS. The GFS has that turn into the Northeast, just a bit north of the European model, has it moving into New England in Maine, and eventually getting forced out a little bit further north. But again, most of that heavy rainfall is in the areas that really need it. Eastern Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, those areas. And you can see the same type of setup here, but that weakness in the jet stream is just a little bit further east, allowing the storm to move in further east, as well as back here in the middle of the country. You can see that jet stream's a little bit stronger here. This is at 6Z on Wednesday. Let's find that here. So you can see here that between the European model and the GFS, there's a little bit of a stronger jet stream in the Ohio River Valley compared to the European model, which has a much weaker jet stream, which will push this low pressure a little bit further out, and that will affect the storm itself before, again, that jet stream becomes a lot more powerful by Thursday into Friday and pushes that storm out. And you can see that the total accumulated precipitation doesn't stretch as far west, keeping those 2+ inches of rainfall a little bit further east. Boston's still getting that. Cape Cod, parts of, most of New Hampshire, and southwest Maine seeing that 2 to 3 inches of rainfall, whereas that 1/2 inch to 2 inches of rainfall stays a little bit further east in parts of eastern Massachusetts, most of Vermont, the rest of New Hampshire, and basically all of Maine seeing that 1/2 inch to 2 inch mark. Now, in this scenario, you have parts of New York, western Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, Connecticut not seeing as much rainfall. But the temperature changes are definitely still there, and maybe even a little bit more vast. As you can see, consistent 50s and 60s in the Northeast, at least until this weekend. You can see that effects of the nor'easter, especially in areas such as eastern Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, where during the day on Wednesday you could be in the 50s and the 60s, which will be a much needed break and even a little glimpse into fall. Now, here is our most advanced model. This is the NAM 3-kilometer model, which shows this low pressure starting to move to the north, and you can see the vast amounts of rainfall that is getting pushed into parts of northern Maine, and the low pressure system actually makes landfall in Nova Scotia and into New Brunswick. So this is the furthest north that we see the low pressure. Now, I'm not going to use the upper level winds here. I'm just going to go straight into the precipitation here. You can see that much of the areas that need the rain don't get it in this scenario. The only areas seeing above a 1/2 inch of rainfall are some areas in the higher elevations of New York, Vermont, and New Hampshire, but mostly northern Maine. And most of the 2-inch amounts are in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. So, the temperature differences will still be there as well. And you can see as this storm starts to move through, you have highs in the 70s on Tuesday. And as the storm starts to make its way north for Wednesday, highs in the 60s and 70s, and maybe even some areas in Maine being in the 50s most of the day. And then by late into the morning on Thursday, you could even see some glimpses of the 40s in some spots of Pennsylvania, New York, and New Hampshire. So overall, a possible system that could benefit many in the Northeast when it comes to drought or just burning off some of that heat for just a few days and giving that glimpse into fall. It is a very beneficial storm for the Northeast at this moment, but hopefully they will get a little bit more of that rainfall, solve some of those drought issues, especially the further east into New England you do go. But that is all the information that I have for today. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.